I think we can get started. We do have quite a bit of content to cover today. I want to make sure we get to all the different questions. So I'll just go ahead and click the next slide here. So first things first, today's session is brought to you by Bucket List Rewards. We're an industry-leading employee rewards and recognition platform. And recognition is just such an important aspect of good leadership communication. So I'm very excited to hear your perspective, Jason, on this topic today. I know you have some really great tips and stories to share as well from your many years as a leader. And we're also very fortunate today to be doing this session in partnership with our friends at Bravely. Bravely is a training and coaching platform that provides employees with on-demand personalized development and support. And Wesley, I'll let you introduce more about yourself, your experiences, and Bravely when it comes to leadership coaching in a few slides down. But overall, everyone, I'm so excited to pick Wesley's brain on leadership communication, and I highly encourage all of you to do the same as well in the comments today. Awesome. And really quickly, a few housekeeping items. We love the chat box feature. Love all the comments that are coming in already. And it's just a friendly reminder that if it's something you're saying you want everybody to be able to see, make sure you hit like the everyone button on the blue drop down, not just hosts and panelists. We do have the Q&A box open as well. If you have a question you want us to address, feel free to pop it in there so it doesn't get lost with all the other fun things going on in the chat. We are running a few polls today, and when we share the results, they'll be aggregated and anonymous. Last but not least, professional development credits will be shared at the end of the session today, and we'll also be emailing them out along with the session recording. All right, now for some quick intros. I'll start with myself. Hello, I'm Rebecca. I'm the community manager here at Bucket List, and I'll be your host for today's session. My academic background is actually in communication, so this topic really resonates with me. I'm so excited for it, and I'm really excited to hear what everyone in the comments has to say as well. Fun fact about me, one thing I'm ticking off my personal bucket list this summer is attending my first ever Renaissance fair. Wesley, why don't you go next and introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Wesley O. Young, and I'm leadership coach here at Bravely. And from a background standpoint, I've been in a lot of different HRBP and COE capacities. So you think of diversity, inclusion, engagement, employee relations, performance management, and supporting leaders in all levels of management. So really seeing the different perspectives of, wow, that was really great communication. Other times it was, could have been, developed a bit better. And just seeing that dissonance there between self-reflection of leaders versus how people receive the message. So this is a topic near and dear to myself. And also, I have 5 cats. So if you have 5 cats, please holler in the chat. But otherwise, that's a little bit about myself. One last thing is I was also HRBP for HR in the past as well. So I'm hoping to provide a bit of that people development too, because many of us are in the people capacity, if I recall correctly, in terms of registrants. So that's a bit about myself, and I'll turn it over to Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Wesley. What one tidbit about Wesley, I've just gotten to know him through the preparation of this webinar. And one of my favorite things is I often get to learn new things by listening and in these prep session. And Wesley is just a fountain of knowledge, and I'm so excited for everybody to hear what he has to share today. And to switch gears and introduce myself. Personally, I'm a dad. I love having adventures with friends and family. And fun fact about me, I'm really good at walking on my hands. Professionally, I am the CEO over at Bucket List Rewards. We're a leading rewards and recognition platform. And I'm just super passionate about culture, about leadership communication, and about building high-performing teams. It's neat. At Bucket List, we get to work with some amazing organizations, everything from Fortune 100s like RBC Bank to rapidly growing scale-ups like HubSpot. And whenever we see a client implementing a good culture building idea, we try to pull that into our own organization, and it's really paid off. At Bucket List, we've been recognized as one of the top 50 best workplaces in Canada for the last 3 years in a row. Our employee satisfaction score is a 9.6 out of 10, and we get tons of employee referrals. So we just did a bit of a hiring spree of 20 new roles, and 80% came from referrals. I don't say that because I want to brag. It's those numbers are more a reflection of good leadership communication, the topic of today, and they're also a reflection of good culture. And why do I share all that? In today's session, if you're open to it, I would love to share all the stories, tools, and tactics that we do internally with you. So if you want me to share stories, feel free to type a yes in that chat panel. I'm going to be more than happy to do so. If you type no, oh, there's thank goodness there are some good yeses in there. Okay, good, because otherwise I wouldn't have much content. But I'm so excited to share today. My hope or vision is that everybody can walk away with between 1 to 3 tactics you can roll out as an individual or roll out in your organization today.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for the intros. Wesley, I'm hoping one of your cats, jumps onto the table sometime during the session. And Jason, I feel like we need to see a video or something of you washing your hands, but maybe next time we'll let you.
Q&A section, right? We'll squeeze it in.
Amazing. Great. So I just thought we could set the stage a little bit for the conversation today, and I'll start with the definition. So leadership communication, it's the method by which leaders convey important business messages like culture, company goals, and then inspire people to action. And good communication leadership skills helps leaders effectively communicate with others in an open way that fosters trust, collaboration, and honest feedback. And when leadership communication is poor, it can impact the team really negatively, resulting in higher stress levels, missed performance goals, and even failure in completing projects. And I'll just end off here with this quote from Simon Sinek. I really like how he emphasizes that communication is not just about saying what we think, words coming out of our mouths. The really important part is making an effort to be sure that people understand exactly what it is that we mean. And I know Wesley and Jason both have tons of great tips and stories on the best ways to communicate as leaders. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. So this is a quick look at today's agenda and areas of topics that we'll be exploring. We'll start pretty broadly and do a group discussion with everyone around common communication mistakes and the state of leadership communication in your organization today. And then we'll get into some more specific questions during the fireside. I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone who submitted a question beforehand. That really helped us, funnel in and narrow down on what topics are the most important to y'all here today. And so we'll go over leadership communication and its impact on business success. Then we'll go into how to communicate company vision and goals. We'll also go into best indications of a good leadership communication. And lastly, of course, we all love those strategies and resources. And so we'll share some at the end there as well. All right, so group discussion time. What is one common communication mistake that you often see leaders make? Give a quick pause for folks to gather their thoughts and answers. All right, Taran, thanks for kicking us off. Not communicating enough. Yeah, that's definitely a huge one. No communication at all, not communicating, lack of communication. Wesley, Jason, any you want to add to the mix that you've seen?
I'll throw one in there, and then I'd love to hear Wesley's feedback. Failing to lead by example. It's so easy. Like, I think about leadership communication, like you can do it as an individual or as a CEO. It applies to everybody, or as a parent. But for example, like you can be a parent and tell your kids not to smoke, but if you go around the corner and light up a cigarette, you are not leading by example. So I think that's a key mistake I see a lot of people making. But Wesley, what are your thoughts?
That's a great one, Jason. For me, what I've noticed a lot in personal life as well as supporting leaders in the recent past has been the notion from a leader that I was very clear. There's something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, whereby we as individuals, we tend to at times can overestimate how effective we are at communicating. And we feel like I was very clear, but when asking the receiver of the message, sometimes quite a bit of a delta there. So I was very clear. And this happens, of course, in the household as well at times. So, just taking a step back to think about, was I clear? And getting that gut check is certainly very beneficial to deal with that barrier there.
You're getting a big thumbs up from Andre there, Wesley, with that. I'm gonna read a couple more that came in. Delayed communication, awkward or unclear, speaking at but not listening, not giving people enough time to ask questions. A lot of like good tidbits in here where you see that it's like a common mistake, so we kind of know like, oh, what we should be doing. So I love that. Um, anything, Wesley, Jason, y'all want to add before we kind of move on to the next part of our group exercise here?
One thing I might do, I'd love to add on to Wesley's comment about people misinterpreting the message. Closely related to that is people just straight up forgetting the message. There's something called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, which states that within 60 minutes of hearing a message, people will forget the majority of what was said. So they might have even understood it, hopefully, but even if they understood it, a lot of people, it just kind of drifts away into the ether. And so what I was told from a young age as a leader is it's important to repeat yourself, not because your audience isn't smart, but it's just important to imprint the message. And the magic number I was told is you might want to say something up to 7 times to ensure it's adequately heard. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there because it was nicely related to Wesley's comment.
Awesome, Jason. So if you say it 6 more times, I'll make sure to remember that.
Yes.
So good start. So the one last thing I would add, and we'll probably address this a bit in subsequent slides, is meeting people where they're at from a psychological standpoint. Imagine like it's a place where there's going to be a big change, word change. What's in it for me? What's going to happen? And we, as the provider of the message, are we really thinking about where their head and heart is at? So we'll probably dive a bit more into that, but thinking of where their head and heart is at. So Becky, thanks for diving in with us on that. But that's awesome. I'll turn it back to you.
Love it. Well, thank you. Thanks everyone in the comments too for sharing. It's awesome. All right, so next part of this exercise, we'd love to get a bit of a feel for where everyone's at today for leadership communications. I'm going to launch a poll. Can y'all see this? Is it launched? So the first question is, how effective are your leaders as a whole when communicating to their organizations? Thank you, Patty. I'm always not sure if it's like up or not, so I'm very grateful when people tell me it is. And then the second question is around what communications skills do your leaders excel at right now? And then number 3, on the flip side, what do you feel people need more help and support on? And as panelists today, we'll do our best to sort of address depending on how y'all are answering on this poll today. Cool, so I'll give it a few more seconds. Ticking in, lots of participation. All right, give a quick countdown from 10. All right, 10, I think 10 is too slow. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2.5. People are so fast at the last second mark. Okay, I'm gonna end it now. Awesome, I'm gonna share the results. Jason, Wesley, any thoughts on what trends we're seeing here so far? And of course, in the comments too, folks, if you're seeing trends, feel free to pop in a chat. We'll all discuss this together. But Wesley, what are your thoughts on what we're seeing here on the poll?
Disclaimer, I'm not an expert on this, on the interpretation of it, but there's something I noticed. It makes me think about survivorship bias, where you've got to have a semblance of communication efficacy, ability to communicate effectively to some degree. So it wouldn't shock me that we're seeing a somewhat effective perspective from those of us who are observers. That said, there's a lot to go, and it looks like a lot of the tools and skills can be, oftentimes they can be closed in terms of the gaps. And that second question, wow, tells us that this is what it says to me. Communication as a whole is a quite consummate, holistic skill set, right? It's not just, I told them everything they needed. Okay, that's great. That's step 1. But what else are you hitting the different facets of communication? Very multifaceted and holistic. Those are some initial observations.
Amazing.
And it's funny looking at these results. To speak to the first question, how effective are leaders as a whole? If I was to be super honest, like, what you have is a spectrum of like, some leaders are very ineffective communicators and some are fantastic. If I was to be really honest, I've probably checked all 5 of these boxes. I've had days where I've delivered a great message, and then conversely, I've done a poor job. And the reason I share that with the audience is I don't think anybody can expect to be perfect all the time. And if you're just beating yourself up, that doesn't serve you or anybody else. That this is like it's a progression thing. Um, and then the second kind of interesting really takeaway I've had around leadership communication is, and this was passed along to me from one of my mentors, is most leaders have a style or form of communication they're best at. And it's probably important for you to understand whatever that medium is and to lean on it heavily. And so maybe that's written communication, in which case maybe you can lean on emails and newsletters. Maybe it's verbal communication. Of course, you can just lean on that as a tool. So finding out and understanding what you're best at and then using that as your delivery format can be a way to quickly move up the scale from a medium performing communicator to a high performing communicator.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for your insights there. And Kent left a really great comment in chat. I'm just going to read it out. He says, I hear a lot of corporate what, but not a lot of corporate why. And it's hard to get inspired when you don't know the why. And so I think that's a great segue actually into our fireside chat. So shout out to Kent for our flawless transition here into fireside. Give me a moment as I stop sharing my screen and figure out what my first question was. Awesome. So the first question for today, what impact do leaders have on an organization's culture, and what does good leadership communication look like? Jason, I'll pass this question off to you first.
So yeah, I mean, great questions, Becca. And I think I'll answer to answer the first one. I think leaders have a massive impact on a company's culture. Leaders can either influence their culture in a positive way, and that results in a really engaged workforce, or leaders can contribute to a negative, disengaged workforce, depending upon how they lead. And I suspect everybody in the audience has had both types of leaders. You've had great leaders and you've had bad leaders. And from my experience, leaders, everything rises and falls with leadership. So it's something to stay on top of. I've got a little acronym to help the audience remember the components of good leadership. The acronym is VERT. And the way I remember this is that when you bring the right people together and you have the right culture and great leadership communication, the results start going up into the right and ideally vertical. And so what does VERT stand for? The V stands for vision and values. So great leaders build a compelling vision that gets people excited. They have well-defined values that people can rally around. The E stands for example, and this references what I said earlier about the importance of leading by example, especially the leaders. The R stands for recognize and reward. We have a lot of experience in this area. Rewards and recognition is the #1 driver for employee engagement. If you want people to feel valued, if you want to lift them up, if you want to motivate them, it's a fantastic tool or lever you can pull on. And the T stands for trust. And so the best leaders should really build trust and engagement. And there's some awesome tools and strategies that I'm going to share a little bit later on today on how you can rapidly build trust amongst your team. These are things that we've implemented internally and I've seen externally. So VERT is the acronym. Hopefully that was useful to some of the folks here. And then to answer your second question, Becca, which is what does good leadership communication look like? I thought I might hopefully share another tool that we use here. And I've seen this tool used by Fortune 100s, professional sport teams, and in a lot of top performing companies. And the concept is called mirrors and windows. It's from a book called Why Some Companies Make the Leap and Others Don't. And here's what it means. So mirrors is all about holding up a mirror and looking internally and taking responsibility when something goes wrong. So as a leader, it's super important to step up and to address a company's shortcomings. I believe it's my job to shield my team from blame and to figure out what went wrong. It doesn't mean that we ignore mistakes, but we address them constructively. And you'll see a lot of good leaders doing this. For example, at General Electric, they faced some pretty heavy insider trading scandals. And the previous CEO, Jack Welch, he could have pushed that down and said this was a mistake from our investor relations team, but he stepped up, took full responsibility, apologized for it, and shared an action plan on how to fix this in the future. So that's a mirrors concept. And then Windows is all about recognizing good work. When good things happen, it's important to look through the windows to see the team and celebrate their hard work, dedication, and success. So just a couple concepts I wanted to share. Those are my thoughts, but I know Wesley has a lot of great ideas, and he can add to this.
Jason, you echoed a lot of amazing perspectives there. And so I only have one thing to add, essentially, is that does the ultimate message, does it land with the what's in it for me at the different layers, the different functions? Let's say you're I've supported AI organizations in the past, software engineers. I see an intern, summer intern engineer going through boot camp, as they call it, vis-a-vis a senior director. How are they going to receive the message? But particularly, what does this mean for my role? What does this mean for future promotions? And does this mean, wait, I'm really shocked at this. Still feels ambiguous. What does this all mean? So does it resonate with the individual at their level, as opposed to only the giver of the message? Because we need to take into account the very variegated and diverse set of population that you may be communicating to.
So,
Otherwise, I think those tools that Jason spoke to is already super more than adequate in terms of getting started with from a toolkit standpoint.
well, thank you both for sharing your thoughts. Ariel and Kent, I saw your question. I will type it out and I'll put in the chat during the next little bit. But in the meantime, let us move on to the second question. Number 2, how can leaders clearly communicate the company's vision and goals so that it resonates with every employee? And Wesley, I'll toss this one to you first.
Yeah, there's kind of a segue from what I was just sharing a moment ago about who you're communicating to, combined with, was it Kent or earlier who spoke to about the why piece? So when we communicate the why, that is quintessential for communicating the company's vision and goals. Because when we look at the part of our mind, the part of our brain that processes memories, it's very much associated with adjacent to the part of our brains and our minds that are associated with emotion, right? So if we communicate just a vision and goal from a data standpoint, this is our goal, this is our vision, and you're just saying it almost like a robotic, straightforward fashion, there's a lot of communication that's lost within that too. So communicating and touching the heart, which is why you provide the why, because then the receiver goes, oh, this matters to me. This could mean X, Y, Z. So they're going to be more retentive to that. I also think that prior to even communicating, something that leaders can do is get folks outside of your cabinet, like your sphere of influence, to give you insight about what's not resonating. Get those contradicting perspectives about how a message may come across. Beyond your direct reports or direct directs, go to folks who might be more neutral, perhaps neutral in terms of the perspective of your communication. That will help you to stay humble and have a very good self-awareness of what's resonating and what will not resonate. And lastly, this is kind of like a leadership coaching standpoint, self-reflection. This is different from just saying, I have this change, I want to communicate it, what do I do next? This is not merely a tactical exercise. It's one that should be predicated with self-thought, self-inquiry, which through a lot of different coaching methodologies that Bravely Leadership Coaching, for example, provides, it's something that really provides that self-evoking, self-reflection standpoint. It doesn't happen overnight. So just to put that all in perspective again, it's not just tell me what to do next, and therefore it's going to be good communication. It's take a breather. Think about really get some coaching, professional coaching, and think before you take action, and then ensuring you're resonating with the heart and the mind altogether. Of course, there's a lot of sub pieces to that, but those are some key takeaways I would leave with us. And that's from my standpoint, but seeing Becky, if Jason wanted to add to that as well.
Yeah, we had a lot of questions prior coming in around this idea of coaching and the different facets in it. So I think it might be good for us to kind of talk a little bit more about, the best way to approach coaching. There are things like giving feedback, and then there's professional coaching. Maybe if you could walk us through the distinction and what you think the best.
Yes. Yeah, I'm very passionate about the semantics around that. Many of us are in the people function and have used the term coaching when it comes to calibrations, performance reviews. Oh, I provided coaching to my direct report. So that's more of what I consider formal performance coaching about feedback. What can you do? It's more behavioral based and actions based versus the goals. And from a professional coaching standpoint, if one way to think of it is ICF, International Coaching Federation, if you just Google it, you look at what are coaching competencies. One thing that is quite distinct is working with a client and working with them almost like imagine you're in a vehicle. The client, the leader, is in the driver's seat and you're in the passenger seat, kind of thinking of what are the possibilities out there. You're providing them visibility with things they otherwise wouldn't have seen. You inject curiosity and empathy with them to get creative about how do they change their behavior. So it's really looking at what are their values, their beliefs, their narratives, and how do we really deeply, entrenchedly enable them to kind of shift their thoughts and behavior. So it's when you think of an iceberg standpoint, it's kind of like focusing a lot on what's beneath the iceberg, and above the iceberg is kind of like what are the actions, what are the outward behaviors that you see from the leader. So I kind of think of it as capital C and lowercase c. They're both super essential in our respective functions.
Love that.
I might add just my 2 cents on that, because I think Wesley's point is so valid. And over a bucket list, like, we're huge believers in mentoring and coaching. There's a really good stat from Gartner that says an effective mentorship program has on average a 600% ROI. And that's not surprising to me, because we've seen the outsized returns by investing in your people. And the reason in my mind, it can almost always work is you have these amazing people out in the world who have already overcome these incredible challenges. They have a playbook for success. And then you have these new and emerging leaders who are coming up against these walls, these challenges for the first time. And I don't know about you, but in my experience, the first time I do anything, it's not perfect. But if they can lean into a coach or a mentor's skill set or their playbook, your opportunity to quickly overcome those challenges goes way up. I have a mentor, a guy named Sasha Williams. I love the guy. He has helped me avoid so many silly mistakes that now in retrospect, I could have seen costing the company a lot of money, costing us, a bunch of time. But he's helped unlock the potential of our organization. And also it's fun. Like, it's nice having a confidant you can talk to and work your way through problems. So huge believer in what Wesley was saying. I think everybody should have a mentor and coach, if you're able to, and if you have the time. Yeah, and should I maybe transition in, and I have a couple comments on the question as well. And when I think of your question, Becca, how can leaders clearly communicate a company's vision and goals? I want to start by asking a question of our audience. So everybody, get ready to type in your answers here. Can anyone guess what % of employees understand what the company is trying to do? So I'll repeat that. What percentage of your team, okay, good. I already see Caroline fired in an answer. What percentage of your team understands what your company's trying to do? There's lots of good guesses in here, and you understand the intent of the question. So I see 25%, I see some 15%, 30%, some really good guesses, very close. According to LinkedIn, on average, only 37% of employees understand what the company's trying to do and why. Meaning more than half your company, 60%, is kind of either completely in the dark or somewhat in the dark. And personally, I think it's a real issue. As a company or as a leader, it's so important to have alignment within your team, to have everybody rallying around a simple vision or goal, or rowing in the same direction. And with that in mind, I actually have 2 tips that people can implement if you choose. The first one that I wanted to share is this concept of a North Star metric. Some of you might be asking, what is a North Star metric? Basically, it's one simple number that you can rally and align the company around. Ideally, a North Star metric should lead to revenue. Customers should get value out of it, and it should measure progress. So I'll give you some examples, because it's probably best explained in those terms. Over at Uber, the ride-sharing app, they keep track of rides booked. That's their North Star metric. At Airbnb, it's the number of nights booked on their platform. At Bucket List, it's the number of people on our platform. The more people get on the platform, the more people we can recognize, drive engagement, or turnover. Quick bonus, if you really want to make this concept even more fun, you can celebrate key milestones internally as they're achieved. So at Bucket List, we recently did a contest to see which employee could guess when we had hit 350,000 employees on our platform. We rolled this out at a quarterly kickoff, and to make it really fun, we gave away a prize, which is we're going to give away a ticket for 2 anywhere in the world for whoever can guess the date the closest. And it created a ton of excitement. Everybody understands what the metric is. People are fired up, they're motivated, they're aligned, they're driving towards it. And so we have a simple number to align the team around that customers get value out of. It's been a ton of fun. So a North Star metric can be really valuable. I suspect many of you might have that out there. One other quick tip, and this might be a little bit of a takeaway for you, the audience member. If you don't have a well-defined vision, or if the vision's poorly communicated, you should seriously think about rectifying that. We followed a process called a vivid vision or a painted picture, and you can just go Google that. There's lots of tools or tactics on this topic. And what a vivid vision is you look 3 years into the future and you write a really creative and very exciting vision for the company. And you write that in the past tense as if it's already been achieved. Once it's written, you can share it with employees throughout the entire employee life cycle. For example, we start sharing it with candidates even before they're hired. We share it with them. We ask them to read it. We ask them to tell us what they like about it and what they don't like about it. It allows us to understand who's excited about where we're headed and who maybe doesn't want to be a part of the journey. And then really importantly, and this relates to Wesley's comments earlier, it's important to let people know how they contribute to the vision and also to check off milestones as you go. In my 2 cents, you want to make employees the hero of the corporate journey, and everybody contributes in their own way. And if you can highlight them, if you can call them out and talk about how a customer service person delivered great customer service, we got a high net promoter score, that customer referred us to 3 others. As leaders, we can paint a picture and make people feel connected to the mission, vision, and values. So North Star metric and painted picture, vivid vision are the 2 tools that we use here, and we've had a lot of success with both of those.
Amazing. Well, thank you both, Wesley and Jason, for sharing. Crystal in the comments, and Virginia was talking about, oh, sorry, it was Sam with the storytelling and Virginia with the vision board. So I think the idea of making something visual and more story-esque just really helps like communicate the vision across. So yeah, thank you all for sharing that in the comments as well. Cool. Let us move to the next question. So we can now talk a little bit about measurement and impact. So the question is, what is the best indicator of good leadership communications? And how can effective leadership communication tackle those key HR challenges and impact business success? So in other words, how do we know what we're doing is working? And Jason, I'll toss this one to you first. And just a quick note to our entire panel, we had such great discussion, but we'll have a couple more questions and we'll try to keep a little bit more concise to keep it moving.
So actually, that's a great point. To be a little more concise on this one, when you have great communication, I think ideally everybody should know how their contributions impact the company performance. And I spoke to that a moment before. I also think that ideally you want to have a high trust environment where people feel comfortable having difficult conversations. And then ultimately, I think if you have great leadership communication, it should show up in the company's performance. So for example, some things that I've seen, some great metrics we track internally is the employee net promoter score. Like out of 10, how likely is somebody to refer a friend to apply at the organization? Another good metric is voluntary turnover. And then ultimately, are you hitting targets as an organization? Are you on the path? Those would be a couple of things that we highlight internally. But as always, I'd love to hear Wesley's perspective on this.
I'm really brainstorming out loud with you here, Jason, because I'm thinking of the following. This is off the cuff here, is the nimbleness of goals. Because imagine a personal development plan or a personal, like the goal for the year from a personal performance standpoint, right? If there's changes that are being addressed or brought up, if the individual is very cognizant of what's being communicated, it would stand to reason that the employee would say, oh, then I need to shift what I'm doing in order to better align with that North Star. So that's one thing that comes to mind is the nimbleness of goals. Secondly is this is something that can be very applicable for those of us who are like from the HR practitioner standpoint is perhaps like identifying what's the word on the street, as I call it, focus groups, because senior leaders who are helping with crafting communications, for example, might bias towards is great, it was communicated well, but what does the engagement survey say from the open-ended questions? Secondly is, if you're talking across the different layers, what's the water cooler conversation about? Like, that went well, that was a atrocious. What's the word on the street when people are in a more non-buttoned up sort of environment? So I would collect that too as a way to get a good, at least qualitative / quantitative idea as well.
Love that. Both qualitative and quantitative. And Crystal left us a great note in the chat box here as well. Setting clear expectations both in a meeting, so verbally, but also in writing for accountability for both the employee and the leader. So I love how it's all tying together, like lots of different channels and different ways to make sure people understand and it's all getting communicated. Awesome. So now we'll go into the last part of our fireside today around tools and strategies. So what are the best tools for us as leaders to have in our communications toolkit? What strategies and techniques, Jason and Wesley, have you seen really just help people connect with each other, connect with their teams, and inspire their teams? And Wesley, I'll just pass this one to you again as well.
This is going to sound a bit generic here on purpose. If you're thinking of what just one thing, if a leader says, I just need one thing, tell me one thing I need to do in order to build my communication skills, get to the extreme basics. If your respective org has something like LinkedIn, Coursera around communication fundamentals, I kid you not, that has been a course module that I had proposed to many VPs and above, and they indicated it completely shifted their way of communicating for them and their children, their spouses, their partners and friends, as well as in the workplace. Fundamentals, communication fundamentals. And if you don't have that in your respective org, perhaps even just literally just Googling fundamentals of communication, not super advanced, just the basic communication fundamentals. For many leaders, perhaps they've been for so long entrenched in their way of communicating that probably was a little bit off trajectory. And then so we want to kind of reverse some of those fundamental habits. So getting back to the communication fundamentals, any layer or level, but especially leaders, get back to the fundamentals. I think I said that word about 7 times, Jason. Is that okay? 7 times? Okay. Fundamental, communication
It resonated
fundamentals.
with me. It's funny, Wesley, to that point, like you're talking about the importance of fundamentals. One of the, this is going to, sorry, I'm just going to say this on the fly because I didn't have any intention in advance of saying this, but I think it's important. I think there's a bit of an art of listening that may have been lost, maybe. For example, I read this great book called The 5 Levels of Leadership, and they spend a lot of time in that book talking about communication. And in one section of the book, they talk about the importance of listening as a leader, especially as a leader, being quiet, posing questions, letting people share their thoughts and commentary. And in the book, they talk about if you still have a notebook, taking the time to write LL in the corner of each page, which represents look and listen. So having a visual cue every time you enter a meeting to be attentive and give people a chance to talk and speak. So absolutely, I think fundamentals matter in this day and age. From my point of view too, there are a couple of really cool tools that we've recently implemented internally, and I wanted to share those. One of those is on how you can build trust with your team rapidly. There's a ton. I've spent a lot of time learning how to build high-performing teams, and the foundation, in my experience, is building great trust, building a foundation of trust. And if you're interested in learning more about it, Google has some really great research on this called Project Aristotle. There's also a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and they both mention, top of the list, trust is foundational to building a high-performing team. So how do you use leadership communication to build trust? I'll share a couple of the exercises we've done recently. One of them is called doing a lifeline exercise. And so we did this at the senior leadership team level. And what is a lifeline? Basically, it's an opportunity. We went around a circle where each person got about 10 minutes, and they got to talk about, these senior leaders each got to talk about the top 3 most meaningful experiences in their life. And you create a place where it's confidential and there's high trust, and you do that by going deep. And typically as a leader, the senior leader, you should go first. And it's pretty cool. It's people will indeed share what was meaningful to them. They might talk about important mentors in their life. They might talk about losing loved ones. People get vulnerable. But more importantly, we really get to know one another. And this builds just a ton of trust amongst the group. And it's really interesting. So often in life, we talk about the weather, we talk about the sports, um, which is fine, but we never talk about the top 5 or bottom 5% of life, which is where all the important things happened. We broke out from the group, and after we did that session, I met with everybody individually, and I asked them for feedback, like, how do you feel before and after? And universally, what I heard from all the team members was that I feel more connected here at Bucket List than I do to any other senior leadership team I was a part of, because we built this level of trust. And then one other fun exercise you might want to consider, that was the first phase we implemented. Phase 2, we did something called a Gallup Strength Finder exercise. It's a survey you can run with employees, or in this case, senior leadership team members. It helps people understand what their unique strengths and gifts are. And then as a team, you can get them into their zone of genius. Something we did with those results is we shared them amongst the entire group, so everybody was aware of the other people's strengths and indeed weaknesses. Both exercises, the first exercise is about building trust. The second one is about helping people get into their zone of genius. So kind of 2 quick tools we've had a ton of success with internally. We piloted it at the SLT level, and we're actually going to cascade that down across a whole organization now. So Becca, you get to join in the fun fairly shortly as well on those.
Looking forward to it. And Crystal is just saying too that they did a similar activity as well recently, Jason, and that it worked really well. So for everyone else in the chat thinking of something new to try, this could be it. Amazing. Wesley, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think the last part of what Jason said, I would just reaffirm it. So nothing to add. I think that was great.
Perfect. And in that case, we'll go to the last part of this strategies and tools section. And so if there are any really specific resources that either of you would recommend for someone who's looking to improve leadership communication. So it could be, books or courses or thought leaders that you've been following. Yeah, Jason, do you want to go first on the resources you would suggest?
Yeah, I'll say one new one and repeat a couple of the ones I've mentioned earlier on. The first is a book called The $1 Trillion Coach. It's about a guy named Bill Campbell, and Bill Campbell coached Steve Jobs at Apple. He coached Eric Schmidt at Google, and if you add up all the companies he coached, it added up to $1 trillion of revenue. And what was cool, the book's written in a story format, and they summarize the key takeaways and all the things that Bill Campbell did as a $1 trillion coach. Everybody here can do. I've already reread this book like 3 times. I've taken a bunch of notes, and I'm always passing along tidbits from the book with my colleagues and teams if they're interested in the topic of leadership communication. Another good book is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And then another great one is The 5 Levels of Leadership. And just to reiterate, the Gallup Q12, the Gallup Strength Finder exercise is another super fun exercise you can do as well. Wesley, what's in your toolkit?
My favorite one is Mind Your Mindset. It's not Mind Your Mindset, it's Mind Your Mindset. And the author, it'll be the first thing that pops up if you type that in from a book standpoint. And the reason I propose this is because it delves a lot into the cognitive, the psychological, what's going on in the brain? How do we create narratives? How do we come up with messages in our head? And the more that we're aware of that, then it enables us to be effective communicators to people, because it enables us to convey messages effectively to the receiver as well. So it gives you so in an indirect way, it gives you a very intimate detail about like how the mind operates. And then as you as a leader or supporting a leader can really think about what is the narrative that we're hoping to inject within our people, and how do we do that effectively? Once you know the mechanics of what goes on in the mind of those personal narratives, then it enables you to communicate that effectively too. The title, I love that. It's very catchy. Mind Your Mindset.
Love it. And I know there's some great books that folks are suggesting in chat as well. The Human Team by Jeanette Wade. Speed of Trust by Stephen M. Covey. And yeah, just generally people love the suggestions that you both had. So no, that's awesome. Great. And yeah, folks in the chat, if there's any other resources that you've come across for communication or leadership communication, feel free to pop in the chat. It's really, really helpful. And I think everyone here loves to read, judging by all the comments. So the to read list can never be too long is what I kind of like live by, but hopefully I can get through at least half of it in my lifetime. Oh, and unreasonable hospitality, 48 laws of power. Amazing.
And Becky, I would emphasize, oh, sorry,
Oh, no, please go
I
ahead.
just had a comment, which is I think these are amazing resources from a self-paced standpoint. It also speaks to the multidimensionality of our development, which is through the leadership coaching that Jason was alluding to earlier. So I would say, like, if they supplement these self-paced resources with someone who's holding them accountable from a coach standpoint, having them to apply what they're reading outwardly in a safe and sacred space, that would be of more of a consummate development and growth. So I would just say coaching, as well as these amazing resources that Jason was alluded to, as well as within the chat, make a really awesome comprehensive development.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. I'm going to bring back up the PowerPoint slide. Yeah, we're going to head on into wrap up now. Got through all the fireside questions with a lot of great discussion. So the last thing we wanted to do as like a key takeaway was, since there's so many gold nuggets that were shared today by both Wesley, Jason, as well as folks in the comments, there is so many great key takeaways. And so I love to turn the question back to the group here. What's your biggest takeaway from today on something that will take leadership communication to the next level? Feel free to pop in the chat. And as people are doing that, Wesley, Jason, do y'all want to share your top thing from today?
I love your comment, Wesley, about having enough books to read for the rest of the year. They just threw in the chat window. I too have more books to read, which I love.
Amazing.
One takeaway I have here is that there is a surfeit of amazing resources that have been contributed in this chat. And this speaks to the notion of iron sharpening iron. So whether you're in the HR practice or whether you're a senior leader in your respective org, is to bounce these ideas, bounce the continued the whole cornucopia of great resources with those whom you work closely with. Because here it's very evident that, oh my gosh, there's so much expertise here. So tap into your expertise in your respective areas as well. So 2 brains are definitely better than 1. 10 brains are definitely better than 1. That goes with resources. That goes with leadership coaching as well. But yeah, Becky, I'll be curious what those outcomes was from the chat. Oh yeah, I'm looking at those answers. Great stuff so far.
Yeah, let's go review what people are saying. So Sam says vert, and I think Ariel also said vert. Fundamentals, share the what, but also always the why. Vivid vision / like painted picture. Elizabeth says important messages need to be repeated. Andre says keep sharing the vision and why. Connecting how our brain processes memories to communicate the company vision. Great leadership equals high results and happy employees. It's a great thing for us to all strive for. Jason, do you want to share your key takeaway before we hop on off to the rest of the wrap up for today?
Yeah, I really like the Wesley's comment around never forgetting the fundamentals, and I see that in my own life as a father. I see it as a CEO. A lot of times when I trip up, I often reflect back. I'm like, what could I have done differently? And normally it's one of the basic things. It's one of the fundamentals. So that was a really good takeaway for me today.
Love it. Well, thank you all for sharing. Really appreciate the participation today and the engagement. We'll just head on into our wrap up and hopefully have a few minutes left for a Q&A. I'll start by popping up our next poll. It is, yeah, this one's more for me and my team. When we're putting together these events, we're always looking for ways to make it better. And so we'd love to hear any of the feedback that you have. And if something's not encompassed in these questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. I do go through each and every one of them. So I appreciate all your thoughts in advance. And thank you so much in participating and giving us feedback. I'll let that run for a few more seconds here. But in the meantime, Well, I'll pop the professional development credits up here on the slide. So we have one for HRCI, one for SHRM. For our friends on the phone today, I'll just read it out once. For HRCI, it's 672510. And for the SHRM, it's 24-9JWMN. And I'll pop these into the chat as well as we hop into Q&A. And thank you everyone for participating in the poll. I'll just end that now. And now I'd love to pass it off to the panelists to share a bit more about the wonderful work that both organizations are doing and how it might support your efforts with leadership communication, building connections, inspiration, and engagement with your team. So Jason, I'll pass it off to you first to kick this off.
Yeah, thanks, Becca. So I'm gonna switch gears if that's okay. I'll still share some good nuggets or tidbits. And I'm going to put on my CEO hat, and I'd love to talk just a little bit more about bucket list rewards. Up on screen, I have that question: do you need support in any of these areas? So does anybody want help with employee recognition? Which, if as a reminder and a connection to today's topic, when you think about VERT, the R in VERT was reward and recognize. If anybody wants help there, if anybody wants to drive up their employee engagement, or if anybody wants help lowering voluntary turnover, just creating a great corporate culture, then we can certainly help you. If you jump to the next slide, Becca, at Bucket List Rewards, we do recognition and rewards in a totally different way. We drive results. It's so interesting. Statistically, a large number of companies have a recognition program, but the vast majority of your employees don't know about it. But we're good at both creating awareness and driving activity in the program. For example, we work with RBC Bank. They had a manual program. They implemented us, a manual program with low engagement. They implemented us, our program and platform. And they saw a 400% lift in recognition. If you want to drive employee engagement, and I know that's a top theme or topic for many HR leaders in the coming year, we're able to help a company, Movista, move from a Gallup medium performing company to one of Gallup's greatest workplaces. And they went on to win many awards. And we've been able to help companies like Homestead lower voluntary turnover more than 40%. And so if you want a demo, just go ahead and click yes. We'll provide a totally custom experience, and we'll also share all sorts of stories, tools, and tactics on how you can create a culture of recognition, on how you can bring your values alive.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Over to you now, Wesley.
Awesome. Yeah, and then there was a great message within the chat from Barbara Saramak talking about Bravely, and just verbally speaking, it's coaching and training platform and enables employees and leaders, with personalized professional development. I think it's great because our well-being as from our career standpoint, there's so much interwovenness in that. And Bravely coaches are specifically trained to provide that expertise for people who are essentially trying to get to their best version of themselves, both professionally and with whatever goals they may have within that context. So we've seen some amazing outcomes at the individual basis, as well as with following organizations. This is just a start. What you saw today is kind of a morsel of what coaching looks like, but definitely follow the link as provided through the QR code and through Barbara. But Bravely wanted to put a plug in there. So thanks, Becky.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing. We can now hop on into Q&A. And we do have a few moments. So if you have a question, now's the time to either pop it in the chat box or put it in the Q&A box. And I'll leave the SHRM codes up as we kind of go through this. Awesome. And so I know people probably have to hop off now, so just want to thank everyone for being here today and participating in the session. We really, really appreciate it. And we hope that you all had a few key takeaways that you have. I do have some Q&A questions that are pre-submitted, so we can start with those before people put them into their new ones into the chat. And also just wanted to say too that we're all very happy to connect with y'all on LinkedIn. So feel free to drop us a connection request, and we'll chat further on LinkedIn. All right, so as people are thinking about their questions and popping it in, I have a few here from prior. So question number 1, what is the best way to disseminate information that changes rapidly or frequently? there's a lot of change that's going on. What is the best way for leaders to kind of get that out? And Wesley, this kind of ties into what you were saying before about the nimbleness of goal changing and all of that good stuff. So Wesley, do you want to start and then pass it off to Jason?
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a not one size fits all sort of thing because we all come from many different various orgs. A couple of things that come to mind is centralized communicate or like some level of project owner of how our communication is going to be disseminated versus a bunch of silos communicating. Secondly, is with regards to nimbleness, like if it's an org that you know is going to constantly be changing and getting new information, setting people up for how they receive the messages effectively. It's almost like change management, enabling people to receive the message well, even if it's changing directions all the time, prior to even providing that sort of communication. But that's a very high level general gist of my perspective there. See if Jason has thoughts.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And so if information is rapidly changing, um, in my experience, you need to set up systems and processes to accommodate and communicate that information successfully. So, and you have to choose what is the information you want to share, what's a medium you want to communicate it through, and what's a cadence you want to release it at. We have a rapidly changing organization. So, for example, we do an all hands meeting every week. It's just 30 minutes long, and it allows us to provide important messages and updates across the entire organization. And we actually speak to our key metrics in that meeting, every single meeting. So super transparently, everybody knows where the ship's heading and how the ship's performing as well. So yeah, cadence, a fast cadence, depending upon the importance of the message and the nature of like the data, is it changing fast or not? And meetings to communicate it at would be my 2 cents.
Amazing. Thank you. And with the 2 minutes we have left, we have a question from Ariel in the chats. How would you suggest approaching leaders who need constructive criticism regarding their negative or less favorable impact?
Oh, I'm currently thinking of due diligence on the front end of how open are they to receiving criticism or negative feedback. Because if there is that challenge of them receiving feedback in the first place, that may be a performance issue in and of itself. I mean, of course, I speak in general terms, but if you're a leader, you should be open to feedback. I speak in broad terms there. So perhaps getting a first diligence on that. And if it's going to be something that's very difficult, in general, have been a proposal for the whoever's providing it to have it ready, like speaking points, or don't ad hoc it. Those kinds of conversations can get pretty emotional or heated. That's not the time to start speaking ad lib on that kind of stuff. Those of us, think about in a household, have you ever had a kid you're having an argument with, both of you are heated? Does it ever go anywhere effectively? So having a very prepared statements is going to be effective too. Of course, depending on what org or what's the culture. But two things again is, are they open to that feedback? First, assessing that, and two is be prepared versus just winging it. So very general perspective there, but yeah, anything to add, Jason?
Yeah, no, those are great points. I love the preparation comment. What I'd also add is you'd want to do anytime you have critical feedback. I mean, this is a bit obvious, but always do it in private. Like, don't do that publicly. You never want to shame anybody, even if everybody agrees with your opinion. Um, I also asked for permission, and I've never had anybody tell me no. And what I mean by that is like, ask people, hey, I'd love to help you with something. Can I share some feedback on whatever the topic is? Because 99% of people want to improve. And also, this is actually from the book $1 Trillion Coach. If people know the feedback's coming from a good place with the intent of helping that person be better, they're far more open to hearing it. And then the last thing is never attack the person. Give them the exact example of what happened and tell them what the interpretation about it was. But yeah, just a couple of tactical things that might help make those conversations go a little bit smoother.
I love that. And Ariel says thank you. And Andre also added on to establish effective communication as a behavioral expectation for leaders. So Wesley is in line with what you were saying before, where it's something leaders should expect to kind of need to take part in. Awesome. Well, we're at the 11 o'clock or where we are in EST or PST time. So we are at the hour mark. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions, who have been participating in the chat. We really appreciate it as a panel, and we hope you had a great time, as much fun as we had. Any last thoughts, Wesley and Jason, before we hit the exit button today?
It's just been a treat having everybody here. Great work participation in the chat. Loved virtually meeting you all. I always feel like I want to connect with people more. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love, and if there's a specific tactic, tool, or takeaway, we have lots of templates. I'm always happy to share them. Becca can help share them as well. So connect with me on LinkedIn. Nice. Thank you. Nice work, Becca. You just threw Wesley's LinkedIn address into the chat window and mine as well. So you guys rule. Thank you for your time.
And I would say, please take care of yourselves the way you would want to take care of those you care about most.
Love that. Awesome. Well, everyone, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next event.
Thank
Bye.
you so much, everybody.